Which NFC West receiver is being criminally undervalued in FFPC drafts right now? What AFC East stack can be had easily and presents a high ceiling? And who represents the best value at tight end for the Cowboys in June high-stakes drafts? Plus, multi-league winner in both the Football Guys Players Championship and the FFPC, Derek Kappes will discuss some of his Football Guys Players Championship roster builds this season and much more. We've got a great show for you. Farrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts right now.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now listening to the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com, with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here's Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Thank you so much, Rob, and thank you to the Quiet Hollers. Remember to check out their music at quiethollers.com or anywhere you buy music. Greetings and salutations, all you Bulkaholics and Ferrelliacs. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com. I am, of course, your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman, and my co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Farrell Elliott. Farrell, no excuses now. We are into minicamp season. We are into June. You haven't been drafting already, man. You got to get out there and start drafting.
You got to get out there and start drafting. It is a blast of fun. I think I'm on my 8th Football Guys team. I'm seeing some new trends develop as we get a little closer, Balky. I'm loving every minute of it.
Yeah, we'll get into some of those trends, too, because a lot of the guests that we have coming up on this show are participants who already, like you, Farrell, have a dozen Football Guys drafts under their belt already this season. It's only going to get hotter and heavier, as well as our program tonight. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to talk about a second-year receiver that might be on the verge of a massive breakout. We're going to talk about how Ben Roethlisberger's elbow will impact the Steelers' offense this season, and multi-league FFPC and Football Guys champ Derek Kappes is going to drop in for some discussion on a sleeper in the Bears' backfield, investing in the Seattle Seahawks this year, and much more. Shout out to the chat room right now. You feel free to post any questions you might have in there. If you want to connect with us on Twitter, the show is at HSFF Hour. I am at Eric Balkman. Farrell is at J. Farrell Elliott. Derek is at Derek Kappes. That's DEREKKAPPES. Facebook.com/HSFF Hour is where to reach us there. 347-426-3682 is the phone number. That's 347-GAME-OBA. You can also email the show at the inbox, highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, those emails, and the tweets in the fantasy feedback segment coming up in the final spot of the show tonight. And thanks to our audio engineer, my best friend Bryce, and our producer and mutual friend Rob for monitoring all of that. The 2021 Football Guys Players Championship Early Bird is indeed live. Remember, if you are signing up by the end of this month and drafting prior to July 15th, you are going to get a free $35 FFPC credit. We'll do that up to 3 times for you. Big news, $500,000 for first place this year, but $100,000 for second. So as long as you're close enough, you can still get a six-figure prize, even if you don't win the whole thing, which is really good. The inaugural Best Ball Tournament has launched. We have 30-second sit-and-goes, 2-hour, 6-hour clocks, live drafts in that as well. Those are popping off every day. Take your swing at $100,000 there. The Dynasty Startups, the Best Ball Drafts Open, including $5 Cinco de Best Ball options. And don't forget about the checkered flag and the main event at KFFSC.com. Take your chance at a 5-figure grand prize in the main event out there, too. And don't forget about that $5,000 for first place in the checkered flag while drafts are still available there. By the way, if you're in the chat room tonight, We do have a special announcement coming before we sign off about next week's program, something special that's going on there. If you're Kevin Williamson, who's already in the chat room tonight, you already know what that special announcement is, but everybody else will find out before we sign off tonight. Thanks to Football Guys, Draft Sharks, NBC Sports Edge, and Rob for tonight's Fantasy Flash, kicking things off in northern Florida. Urban Meyer, the new head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, said DJ Chark's film last year was, quote, a big guy that played little, this according to ESPN. Meyer said he didn't like DJ Chark's size. Quote, his strength, I just thought was way below average, way below what we expect from our receivers, and he was told that. He's a big guy that played little last year, and that can't happen. He's got to play big and strong. Chark put on 7 pounds of muscle, and we will see if this continues to motivate Chark the right way. DJ Chark, as we look at Football Guys Players Championship ADP, which we always get from our good buddy Darren Armani at FantasyMojo.com, over the last 5 days in Football Guys drafts, DJ Chark is wide receiver 32 at the 705. That is right after Cortland Sutton and Juju Smith-Schuster. It is right before Devontae Smith and Robbie Anderson. Farrell, we haven't talked about DJ Chark a whole lot, but the next receiver we're going to talk about, I think, is in the same boat as him, is we're kind of penalizing him for what we saw last year. Chark represents a good bit of value at wide receiver 32, in my opinion. Do you happen to agree with that?
I do agree with that, and I agree with what the coach is doing. Accountability is a big, big part of football, and he's putting it out there. Henry Jordan says that you're great. Vince Lombardi treated players all the same way, like dogs. But that wasn't correct, Balky. He selected. He was a master motivator, and he selected certain individuals to motivate them in different ways, and each one of them would require a little different attention. And as you say here, it appears to be working with DJ Chark. I love this receiver core down there. It's very inviting for this rookie quarterback, and if the coach likes big receivers, he needs to look no further than 6'6" Colin Johnson, who is free in drafts now, and I think will maybe unseat some playing time from some of these guys. But what a great look in Jacksonville as we move into this season.
Yeah, you mentioned Colin Johnson. I think we've talked about him on this program before, where if he would have come out a year earlier, there were some, teams and pundits out there that was saying he was going to be a first-round pick out of Texas. He stayed the next year, didn't fare so well, and then obviously tumbled way down NFL draft boards and has an opportunity in front of him with Trevor Lawrence tossing on the rock this year. That Jacksonville offense is going to be fun to watch, not just with the receivers, but you think about Travis Etienne and James Robinson in the backfield as well. Fun times in Jacksonville. We haven't said that in a while. Now, moving on to that receiver that I was talking about at the top when we were talking about DJ Chark, Cooper Kupp said on Wednesday that his knee is doing really well. This according to Jordan Rodriguez on Twitter. Kupp missed the final week of the season last year with bursitis in his knee. This is something that he played with the entire season. He played in the wild card game for the Rams, then he missed the divisional playoff against the Green Bay Packers. He called it a degloving of the tissues beneath my skin. I don't know if that sounds good at all. He said it wasn't bursitis, but he had it earlier in the year, but then didn't have the bursitis anymore. And then the tissue degloving is what took place at the end of the year. Cooper Kupp is 28 years old. He missed the entire 2018 season, or most of the 2018 season, with a torn ACL. Farrell, as we look at the ADP for Cooper Kupp right now in Football Guys drafts over the last 5 days, wide receiver 21 at the 504. This is right before Adam Thielen and Deontay Johnson. It is right after DJ Moore and Jamar Chase. You look at the touchdown disparity, only 3 touchdowns last year, but he had a boatload of receptions. He had a boatload of yardage. It was very comparable to Robert Woods. The main difference is the touchdowns. Are we unfairly penalizing Cooper Kupp for not getting in the end zone? And those owners that do take a chance on him in the mid-5th round, are they actually going to be very happy with that they went with Kupp and took the chance on him when we come back and look at this conversation in December and January?
I think they certainly will be. And anyone that has given up on this player is probably making a mistake. Now, arthritis, bursitis, 2 running buddies that show up after an ACL. I sometimes think in Los Angeles the team doctor and the medical staff there talk a little too much. We seem to get too much information about these players. I think part of that follows Todd Gurley around a little bit. But when Cooper Kupp came out, Balky, and this is something that has stuck to him very, very early in his career. When he came out of college, a descriptor that I had never heard, being around football all these years, I had never heard that he slows the game down around him. Most players, they're talking about, oh, you got to pick up your game, you got to speed up your game, play faster, you're in the NFL. Cooper Kupp is the polar opposite of that. He has a rare set of hands, an exceptional ball tracker. Robert Woods has got to get separation. Robert Woods has got to be open to make that catch. Maybe Stafford not as much as he has been in the past. But my point is that if the ball is catchable, Coop will go get it and catch it. Balance, physicality, those are his games. With the new quarterback, he'll return to be a red zone threat. And I hope he's healthy. Naturally, you need healthy, whether the game is in your speed or you have a very, very unique game like Kupp does, you need to have healthy knees to make the cuts and make the plays. But still, this player plays a unique game, and he can pay dividends with his skill set, unlike a lot of players. I'm always high on Cooper Kupp, middle of the fifth round. I've got to go get him.
Yeah, it certainly has a good opportunity to finish much higher than wide receiver 21. Speaking of receivers here, as we have a heavy wide receiver fantasy flash, Michael Gelkin, who writes for the Dallas Morning News, reports that CeeDee Lamb has actually been playing in 4 different wideout spots during the workouts in the offseason for the Cowboys. Mike McCarthy, quote, "He's an excellent example of what you're looking for in your second-year players. I see CeeDee making that jump. He is very comfortable, very natural." CeeDee Lamb last year, 93% of his routes were from the slot, obviously with Michael Gallup and Amari Cooper playing outside. He led the team in end zone targets, only with 3, because that was 3 red zone targets before Dak Prescott actually went down. And then, well, let's face it might have been all season because there wasn't a whole lot of red zone targets, end zone targets after that. CeeDee Lamb is looking, as we look, I actually just drafted him in the checkered flag championship with the KFFSC. I drafted him on Monday night. Yes, thank you so much, Farrell. I appreciate that. Wide receiver 12 at the 311, right after Keenan Allen and Terry McLaurin, right before Allen Robinson and Amari Cooper. One of the things that's interesting about this, Farrell, is Mike McCarthy, obviously the longtime coach in Green Bay. He always preached this over and over again, is he saw a lot of the draft picks that the Packers made would make this significant jump in year 2, the sophomore jump as opposed to the sophomore slump. And he looks there, it seems that CeeDee Lamb is poised to do that this year. Could have taken him or Amari Cooper. I went with CeeDee Lamb because I liked the upside better. I liked what I saw in the limited time with Dak Prescott last year. And I really love CeeDee Lamb this year. I wish I had more of him. I think I only have him in like 3 leagues so far, maybe only 2 leagues. But even wide receiver 12 at the end of the 3rd round, that's a price I'm willing to pay because of this guy's upside.
Yes, sir. If you're assigned a draft spot in the FFPC, the football guys, anywhere from 8 through 12, and you come into that 3rd round, that's CeeDee Lamb territory, and I think you'd be crazy not to get him. I expect him to continue to move up. Yes, natural and comfortable with the Duke's mixture of quarterbacks, a whole team that didn't look natural and comfortable. And at every position, Lamb brought in his rookie year a certain quality to this team. And I do believe even with Justin Jefferson's wonderful season last year, I would have to say that that's the one rookie receiver that outperformed Lamb last year. But there was something about Lamb's season which makes me think that he's got a lot of great football in front of him, and we haven't seen it yet. You know, it was a glorious class of rookie receivers. Last year, some of them we talked about last week with Nat Platsky. Was Rager stepping up. Van Jefferson is a first-teamer with the Rams this year, and people seem to be sleeping on him. And, Henry Ruggs was the first wide receiver off the board. Don't give up on Henry. There's a lot of guys that will need to step up in their second year. The CeeDee Lamb has the talent to step up, and I think he will.
I have a feeling we might get into some Henry Ruggs with our guest tonight, Derek Kappes, who's coming up in just a couple of minutes here, ladies and gentlemen. I know that gets Farrell excited anytime we can talk Raiders football on the HSFF Hour. We've been talking about a lot of receivers here. One other thing I want to touch on before Derek, we get to his interview. Michael Carter is the new fresh rookie running back in New York for the Jets. The Athletic's Connor Hughes says, quote, "It won't be long before 4th-rounder Michael Carter is indeed the Jets' lead back. Now, Hughes is the beat writer for the Jets for The Athletic and has really been beating this drum about Michael Carter being the lead back, talking about how elusive he is, his ability to make plays, and Tevin Coleman's actually been running ahead of him for the Jets right now. Carter has been getting his reps in the individual work portion of minicamp right now for the Jets. Michael Carter, Tevin Coleman, Ty Johnson working with the rookie and presumed starter Zach Wilson at OTAs. LaMichael Pirine and Josh Adams have been working with the backups. Michael Carter right now, Farrell, a guy that I grabbed in a couple spots. I like him this year. I don't love him. But running back 31 in the mid-7th round, you look at the other running backs there. Now, I know you're probably going to take your guy Raheem Mostert over Carter, and most FFPC guys have been doing just that. But Carter's going ahead of Melvin Gordon, Leonard Fournette. I think I'd do that too. I think I'd rather have Carter than Melvin Gordon or Leonard Fournette right now. How high are you on the rookie?
I like Carter very much, but I'm going to have to approach playing Carter with a crystal ball, and I would slow down our writer here. If people want to know who Michael Carter is, they can think of another Jet running back, Leon Washington. This player's the same size, same build as Leon Washington. What did we always talk about Leon Washington? We wished he would get more opportunity. So we got to look at what's in the way of this player having opportunity. And his name is Tevin Coleman, and a lot of people roll their eyes at Tevin Coleman, but this is the third go-round between this player and this offensive coordinator. Mike LaFleur was at Atlanta when Coleman showed up. He followed on the bigger free agent deal to San Francisco. The head coach and the offensive coordinator, LaFleur, was the passing game coordinator at San Francisco. These guys know this player. This is not like a veteran player that was added on by a general manager and tells the coaches to make a fit. This is a player that has, the 2020 he spent the entire year essentially injured, only had one start. So when we look at what, a cursory look at the Jets' schedule suggests they're going to have an easier time to start than they will to finish. So you think that, the rookie running back, he will eventually, as our writer here says, he will eventually earn the job. Well, Coleman's got the opportunity to play against some competition that might be a bit easier for him to break out with. I could talk about this all night, and we got our guests waiting. It doesn't mean that I don't like or know Carter. Carter does exactly what he must do to be successful in this system. The reason he was drafted, this is a zone blocking scheme. It mirrors the Mike Shanahan offense that goes back years. It's going to be a shame to see Mekhi Becton in a zone blocking system. That's a whole other story. But, Carter was a standout with the 3-cone drill and the shuttle drill on his pro day. He's a natural fit for this offense. But, Balky, the relationships with the coaching staff and what they believe in with Tevin Coleman. And I'll tell you this. We saw, in 2020, we saw both these running backs from Carolina tear up Wake Forest and tear up Duke. And, my memory goes back to 2019 when the San Francisco, I don't even have to leave the state of North Carolina. Coleman comes into Carolina, rushes for 3 touchdowns, catches another 4-touchdown game on 100 yards. And then I look one more aspect of the depth chart of this team. There's a lot of young players on it. Do I think they're going to open the season with a lot of chances with a rookie running back and a rookie quarterback? So if I'm going to make this choice with this player in the 7th round, I'm going to also look at where I can pick up Coleman, which has normally been around the 14th or 15th, although in the Football Guys today, I think some relatively astute gentleman picked Coleman in the 12th round.
Yeah, ADP currently of Tevin Coleman, running back 57 at the 1403. That has been climbing a little bit too. Man, if you look at Getting Michael Carter in the 7th, getting Tevin Coleman in the 12th, 13th might not be the worst stack in the world as far as trying to lock up what should be an improved backfield for the Jets this year. And Farrell, Leon Washington, you brought him up. He probably won't have to go far to pick Leon Washington's brain, will Michael Carter. Leon Washington, an assistant special teams coach currently for the New York Jets. Very interesting how time is a flat circle there. Let's get to tonight's guest, ladies and gentlemen. I want to bring him in right now. He's been playing fantasy football for the past decade and got into high-stakes leagues in the FFPC in the 2019 season, playing a few best balls in the main event. Today, he's heavily invested in the Football Guys Players Championship. Will be going to Vegas for the live main event drafts this year as well. To date, he's already won 3 leagues, hopes to have a big upcoming season this year with the FFPC. Please welcome into the show, Derek Kappes. Derek, good Friday to you, and thanks for hopping aboard tonight, man.
Yeah, what's going on, guys? Hey, Balky, Farrell. Happy Friday to you guys as well.
It's good to... Thank you so much, man. Thank you. You probably already saw this today. I think you liked the tweet, but apparently David Hubbard, who is a former FFPC main event champ, plays a ton of Football Guys leagues, obviously. You have irritated him being in the same draft before because it seems like you're always taking the players that he's targeting.
Yeah, I've seen him in several of my drafts the past couple of years. It's been great. I love competing against all of these great players, and in all these drafts, I typically see several guys in all of the same drafts. So it's really awesome to be able to play against these guys.
Derek, I know that we are heading out to California. You're coming to us from California tonight. What are you doing for a living out there in the Bay Area?
Sure. So I work for the job company Career Builder. You guys familiar? They're like the oldest job
absolutely.
board.
Yes.
Yeah. So similar to like LinkedIn, Indeed, but I'm an account manager for them. So I sort of manage a bunch of accounts for them. So it's a great gig. I moved out to California with my wife during COVID from Chicago. So been here since August of last year in Santa Barbara. And the live draft, they've been on my radar here, so I figured why not. It's a very short flight to Vegas. And me and my wife are going to stay at the Planet Hollywood for 5 nights. So we're definitely excited about that.
I love it, Balky. We have a contrarian move, a guy from sweet home Chicago. Everybody's leaving California. Derek is headed right into the heart of the Bay Area and is going to flee to his annual sojourn to Las Vegas. I love that, and it'll be a pleasure to meet you. And between now and then, I've got to figure out what to do with 2 players because I haven't drafted them anywhere. When I get to the 8th, 9th, 10th round and start looking at Dolphins, especially at the wide receiver position, it's usually Waddle and Parker. And I understand you're really loading up on Tua and Will Fuller. What am I missing in these 2 players, and why are these players guys you're targeting?
Yeah, so, Tua he's probably one of my top best ball targets for the QB2. He pretty much gets forgotten. He's going in like the 10 to 12th round in best balls, which is really late for quarterbacks. So, you can really wait on quarterbacks and best balls and essentially get him as your QB1 if you want. But, I think he just has great value this year. He had no preseason last year. He was coming off that serious hip injury. Many people were, attributing that to something similar to like Bo Jackson. So, I didn't foresee him having a great year. And then sort of this offseason, they've built that roster around him. They've added Fuller, they've added Waddle, and I think he should be back close to 100%. So, why not draft Tua late, as your QB2 and sort of see what happens there.
Yeah, but might not. I mean, again, we're talking about draft capital, but we're also talking about the potential ceiling of these late round guys. That's what you want to do. You don't necessarily draft for floor, as a lot of people do in the beginning of the draft. You want to draft for ceiling late, and Tua Tagovailoa is a perfect example of that. You already said it, Derek. You are a Bears fan coming out of the Midwest from Chicago. Let's talk about David Montgomery here and the rest of the Bears running backs. Now, Montgomery last year took advantage of Tariq Cohen's injury, and he really, he was flat out awesome, like the last 5-6 weeks of the season. Helped a lot of people win a lot of fantasy championships. You think he's ready to do that again in 2021? Or when you look at the rest of the Bears that are being drafted, as far as the running backs go right now, is there a better investment that you can make in your drafts in the Chicago backfield other than David Montgomery?
Yeah, so I think that backfield, Montgomery's who you want. Damian Williams is interesting, but, I need to see more of sort of how he's going to be used here. Just see how he looks in preseason, because he hasn't played since, 2 seasons ago. But, just like you said, he was a league winner last year. Like the last 6 games, I think he was over 20 PPR points like each game, and he won a lot of people, championships last year. And I think he was the RB4, which is pretty insane value for where people got him. In many of the drafts I'm doing now, he's going to like the 3-4 turn. I've even gotten him at the 409 as my first running back, and I was like ecstatic for that. Mm-hmm. But he, if he keeps, I know Cohen's back, but if Montgomery can still get those 3 to 4 targets, each game, if he can get those 2 receptions, like I think he's going to be a low end RB1, and people are getting him now, in the RB 15 to 20 range. So I think there's a lot of meat on that bone for people to sort of get value from where he's going right now.
Hey, Derek, you're prolifically drafting. When does the
too much
best ball drafts? When do the best balls in and the classic or managed leagues begin? And when it's all said and done, what's going to be your percentage of each?
So I typically, to be honest, I probably won't do much more best ball besides the best ball championship that FFPC has. I might do 1 or 2 of those, but I started drafting best balls, I think, on the first day back in, bulky low, was that January, February?
Yep, absolutely, so January, yep.
Yeah. I just like to, dip my toes in, see what the ADP is. So I've probably done around 20 best balls. So I'm pretty much done with best balls and now sort of transitioning more into classic redraft.
Well, I was right there with you, and I naturally the Super Bowl was very fresh in my mind, and I was surprised with some of the value of the Tampa players that you could get in the best ball, especially when you could stack a position like Gronkowski and O.J. Howard was one that I was very interested in. It was a no-brainer for best ball. As we transition into managed leagues, what are you doing about these 2 players now? How do you want to fit them into a 20-man roster, and do you see value for either of them?
Yeah, so like you said, they're best for best ball. I did do an FPC on Monday of this week, and I did take, I think I took Gronk in the 13th or 14th round, and then O.J. Howard is last round. So I'm just sort of grabbing both of them, and just sort of seeing how the season plays out. If one of them, takes a stranglehold on the position, great. To be honest, I think they're both gonna, take targets from each other. But, if you can get the tight end one for Brady and potentially have that as your tight end 2 on your team, I think it's worth doing that.
Talking with Derek Kappes, a multi-league winner in both the FFPC and the Football Guys Players Championship. You follow him on Twitter at Derek Kappes. Derek, you look at J.K. Dobbins, his second-year running back, expected to take a big step forward for the Baltimore Ravens. But I'm just kind of curious as I look at his ADP. Not the biggest pass catcher in the world is Dobbins, and right now Football Guys drafters are selecting him fairly high, running back 16 at the 303, so sort of right after that 2-3 turn. Do you think that is an overdrafting of Dobbins? Is that drafting more for his ceiling rather than what he's going to put up? And if you do believe people are overdrafting him right now, do you think Gus Edwards makes for a better investment, a better target in the mid rounds?
Yeah, so I mean, this was probably the hardest. This is a tough question. I'm a Dobbins truther. I have several shares of him in FFPC leagues. I guess it really depends on where you get him. Most of my shares are in the third round, and I think he's a great value in the middle of the third there. I saw Roman came out today saying they're optimistic on trying to get him more targets in the offense. So, worst case, like, he's where he was last year, and I think maybe it's a bit of a, you're drafting him a little too high, but if he improves a little bit, he's going to be a steal in the third round. And, I don't see much difference with him and really Nick Chubb, who's going early second. Chubb doesn't get targets, and, I could see Dobbins this year with like 1,200 rushing yards, 10 touchdowns, which is what you would expect out of Chubb, and he's going at the 1-2 turn. So, I think getting him in the third round is a great value.
Great value can be found in the oddest places sometimes. And I get a lot of heat because when I first introduced to football, Derek, I was captivated and motivated and just completely entertained by Darryl LaMonica and the Mad Bomber of the then Oakland Raiders. It was a whole new kind of football for me. Much better than watching 3 yards in a cloud of dust and what was the NFL then. I was an AFL guy. And, it's just fond memories and nostalgia for me when I talk about the Raiders. And now they're being in Las Vegas, and, we'll be out there for the FFPC, and so will the Baltimore Ravens week 1. And I'm curious in week 1, because I don't know how Jacobs and company will run the ball against the Ravens. I'm curious as who Derek Carr is going to go to beside his stellar tight end, Darren Waller. And we hear about all the time that Gruden is taking receivers. And I think he should, because the depth chart to me is not that impressive. I wish he would take some of the correct receivers. But nevertheless, who will you be keeping your eye on, and are you drafting any Raider offensive threats besides Jacobs and Waller?
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely not great there. In a lot of best balls, I've been pairing John Brown and Henry Ruggs. I feel like that's a good move. And in terms of like redraft, it's tough. The guy I would go with would be Henry Ruggs. Just like, following him on Twitter, this offseason, it seems like he's, gotten bigger. And last year he had a lot of injuries. I think he had 2 or 3 different injuries. And
he was the first wide receiver taken in the draft last year.
Yeah. So, they're not going to give up on him. Yeah, he's their guy. And, like, his average depth of target was, 16, 17 yards last year, which is the highest in the league. So I think if they can get him sort of, involved in some different passing routes, sort of shorter distance, because that's how he was used at Alabama. He wasn't really this big, play guy. His ADOT was lower than, 17 back in college. So if they can sort of switch that around and he stays healthy, I think he can be a decent wide receiver 4 on a redraft team.
I'm so glad that you didn't say Hunter Renfrow. And, there's a lot of people looking forward to our first weekend of football. I'm looking forward to seeing Hunter Renfrow displaced from the Raider lineup and Willie Snead go onto the field and just block the hell out of his old Baltimore teammates. So that's what I'm I kind of get my jollies from different sorts of players. So,
I had to start Renfrow in my flex spot last year in a couple of spots, and let me tell you, it was not good,
How do you get on your roster? Is the missus playing around in free agency a little bit? How'd that happen?
I'd have to look back, but I think injuries and I think he had a decent start to the season last year, the first half, from what I remember. A lot of 6 for 60s, which is 12 points. So in your flex,
I don't think he had that. I don't think he had that. You got to go back. And I'm telling you from someone who lived it along with you. So, not holding a grudge or anything, but I just have a good memory. I didn't think he had many startable games. So.
Derek, now before you already know where these guys are going. These Seattle Seahawks, I'm about to ask you about. For the listeners' sake, I'm going to bring it up right now before I ask you this question. I'm wondering what you think the best investment is in football guys drafts at the moment among these Seattle Seahawks. Is it Chris Carson right now? Chris Carson, who by the way is going at running back 18 at the 311. Is it DK Metcalf? DK Metcalf is wide receiver 8. Going at the 303, so another third-round Seattle pick, or do you think it's a little bit later on? Tyler Lockett, wide receiver 26 at the 603. Which is the best expensing of draft capital between those three players?
Yeah, I think you could even throw in Russell Wilson in this. Like, he's going very late for quarterbacks, but for these three guys, DK is going to like the 2-3 turn. You'll see Carson in the middle third, maybe early fourth. But the guy I've been drafting a lot is Tyler Lockett. Just like in the last 7 days, from Fantasy Mojo sort of data, he's going in like the 6th or the 6th and the 7th round. But when I started drafting early May in these FPCs, he was going in like the 8th round, sometimes 9th, which is why I have been drafting a lot just because of these insane values. But I would go with Lockett. In terms of like production, like it was very similar last year. I think Metcalf had like 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns, and Lockett was around 1,010. So the discrepancy there with DK and Lockett, I think, is a little too big. And if Lockett keeps those poor games limited a little bit more this year, I think he could be a solid wide receiver 2, low end wide receiver 1 that you're getting pretty late.
The decisions like that is what propelled you to a 3-division championship last year in the 3 main event divisions in the FFPC. I get the feeling that this is a step up for you this year. It is for me too. I'm enjoying the slow drafts and I've never drafted this much, and it. I wish I could say that my drafting had been prompted by such exceptional play as you had. So you're gonna. Am I to take that this is the first live main event in the FFPC for you?
Correct.
Or
yeah.
Are you? Oh, okay, good.
Oh, wait,
you're going to have
I've been in 4 FFPC main event leagues that have been online, but this will be my first one like live in Vegas. Yeah.
You're gonna have a blast.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be great to have you out there, and I look forward to meeting you. And I think more people should copy that. And I agree with you. Drafting early allows you to see these valuable the situations that get involved with players that by August and by the live draft you probably can't get at these bargain prices. In addition to Lockett, do you have another guy that you've just really targeted or really noticed that you say, man, I'm so happy I can get my hands on this player?
Yeah. In terms of like a sleeper, I feel like every draft I leave with Darnell Mooney. It could be the Bears fandom in me, but he's going in the like 12, 13, maybe even 14th round. And, look, if Dalton plays next year, he'd be probably, he's not going to be much better than he was his rookie year. But if Fields, gets on the field, week 2, week 3, like he's a deep ball thrower, and Mooney's a really good, explosive, deep ball threat guy. So, I think they could have a connection, and he could put up decent, maybe low end wide receiver 2 numbers. So I feel like every FPC draft I'm leaving with Mooney.
We want to get to some feedback from the listeners here for you tonight, Derek. The first question is a guy I'm sure you've drafted against in the Football Guys Players Championship this year. He's actually in a draft right now, and that's why he's not listening live like he normally is. But Hudson Kern-Reeve, the Wasp guy, wants to know if you think DeAndre Swift's ADP should start sinking, giving the head coach there, Dan Campbell, and Anthony Lynn, the OC, the sort of their hot hand approach that they've been talking up with the Lions running backs with Jamal Williams, with DeAndre Swift, and now, speaking with Todd Gurley, too. And we'll see if he comes aboard in Detroit. But you look at Swift's ADP here. Currently, he is being drafted as the 17th running back off the board at the 303. Is that too high? You think it's going to come down? What's your crystal ball say on where Swift's ADP is going to go over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, so I don't think his ADP is going to go much lower than it is right now. I took my first share of Swift in that draft on Monday, actually, in the third round. I wasn't buying any of Swift when he was going like early second to even mid-second, just because you're having to pass up like Diggs and A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins. Like, those are guys I want on my team over Swift. But, those concerns are valid. They have a lot of guys in the backfield, and it seems like Jamal Williams, he's going to get maybe 30-40% of the touches there. So it's tough. But, I'm still taking him in the early to mid-third right now. So.
Draft DeAndre Swift with confidence is the line that we're getting from Derek Kappes tonight. So good stuff there. Also, when we were talking about the Seattle Seahawks earlier, two players that we left out are two players that the Bourbon City Ballers' Kevin Williamson is asking about. He wants to know for redraft, Dwayne Eskridge, Gerald Everett, are you interested in either of those players in the Football Guys Players Championship this year in Seattle?
Yeah, so I think I have some shares of Eskridge. I'm not sure how much he's going to get on the field early on in the year, but I think like Lockett's sort of putting him under his wing and showing him the ropes of the league. And, I think he could turn it on maybe later in the year. But in terms of redraft, he's someone who might be the last wide receiver you want on your bench, and you'll probably drop him and maybe pick him up again. But, yeah, he's definitely someone I would be interested in. Gerald Everett, I really have no idea on that guy. I would need to see more of him this preseason. I mean, he's the tight end one there, so you can't go wrong. Taking him in a tight end premium league, and he's going in like the 17th or maybe 15th or 18th rounds. So I like him. I don't have too many shares of him, but I think that's a player I need to look more into a little bit.
I think that's
tight end 21.
When somebody
Go ahead, Farrell.
Oh yeah, when somebody throws a player like that, and I'm hearing that player's name a lot. Go as deep as you can, Derek. Go back to his college days. Go back to what they thought of him when he came into the league. It's been a mystery to me why that player has not been given bigger opportunities. And go to that great Kansas City Rams game where both teams collectively pushed 100 points, and you'll get to see some Gerald Everett that is worth having. Balky, have you got another email, or can I find out who the stinker in Derek's list is at this point?
Yes, no, please go ahead, Farrell.
Buddy, you gave us your great sleeper. Now, this question, you've got a situation with players that maybe you're avoiding because of talent, or maybe, despite all these drafts that I've been in, for instance, I can't get a landing spot where I have drafted the standout running back from the Colts, Taylor. So, and I expect to before the season's over, but I got a lot of teams, and I don't have one single Taylor. So tell me somebody that is like that you're intentionally avoiding, or you're circumstantially not much in business with.
Yeah, so I think the guy for me I have 0 shares of is Chase Edmonds right now. Just looking at the data, it looks like he's going in I've seen him in the 5th round which is insane. And lately he's been going in the 6th round. But, I see him just having the same role as last season. And I've been drafting a lot of James Conner, who's going in like the 10th, 10th round. And I see him sort of replacing Kenyon Drake's role from last year. And, Edmonds just doing sort of what he did last year. So, people are taking Edmonds over Lockett's going in the 6th round now, T. Higgins, Ayuk. Like it's pretty pricey for him, and you're taking him over these solid wide receiver twos. So I don't think Chase Edmonds is going to be someone I have much on my teams this year.
I got one follow-up question, Balky, if we have time.
Go ahead, Farrell. Yes, please.
What do you consider yourself to be, a better drafter or a better game manager, better lineup manager?
Aren't they similar?
Where did these great wins come from last year?
I wouldn't say I'm a better drafter than others. I feel like maybe in the way I draft, like I'm not one to draft like 6 running backs in the first 6 rounds. I'm not one of those drafters, but I try to have a balanced team and put myself in position, to where I have, strengths all around my roster, not just one, not just like strong at running back and wide receiver, but I try to have a balanced roster. So I don't really do anything too crazy in drafts. But hopefully that sort of answered the question a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And so for you, Derek, too, like when you're going hard on all these football guys' drafts this year, how concerned are you about the waiver wire and making sure all these teams are up to snuff? Certainly, I don't want to say the waiver wire is going to be easier this year with COVID maybe not being as big of a factor. But when you consider drafting all these teams, how concerned are you about keeping up on the waiver wire and making sure that you're formulating and putting forth the best possible starting lineups you can on a week-to-week basis?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be tough. I know some guys hire people to do their waiver wires and all that stuff, but I actually really enjoy it. I love redraft. I like best ball, but to be honest, once I draft those teams, I don't look at them until maybe the last week of the season. Whereas redraft, I really enjoy sort of the strategy and figuring out, how much your opponent's going to bid on a guy on the waiver wire, and sort of trying to figure out whether you should go heavy early with Fab or maybe, keep some if you're, going to make the playoffs. I think this year, waivers are Wednesday and Sunday, I think. So, last year it was the first big year I had where I think I was managing like 15 teams, and it definitely was a challenge, but, I just devote, one night each week and focus on that and put in my bids, and then I'm done. I'm looking forward to it.
I'll say, and Derek, it's interesting too, because I look forward to waivers too. I think it gets a bad rap, right? We all love drafting. Yeah. Drafting is so much fun, but then the managing of the lineups, the managing of waivers gets to be a little tiresome after a while. But I'll tell you what, and that's the attitude I've had for most of the last 10 years. But the last few years, man, I love waking up on Thursday mornings to see who I got, right? To see who I got on the waiver wire, because it's sort of like not a second draft. I mean, that's ridiculous. But just to see how I did on the bids, see how the bids turned out. I think that's as much fun. Thursday mornings, very, very fun part of my week. And Friday nights, always a very fun part of my week, especially when we get to talk to great guests like Derek Kappes. You follow him on Twitter, @Derek Kappes. Derek, can't thank you enough for coming on, carving out a little bit of time on your Friday night to hop aboard and talk a little shop with us. Good luck in all your leagues, and we'll see you out in Planning Hollywood in a couple of months, man.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'll see you in Vegas.
Thank you, Derek.
Absolutely. Derek Kappes, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, absolutely. You do the same. So good to have a former multi-league champ in the FFPC and the Football Guys Players Championship come aboard tonight. Good stuff from Derek Kappes, and I not that I envy him, Farrell, but man, the first year you really go full out, go all in drafting a ton of teams. that is such a fun year, And obviously, if it turns out bad, it turns out bad. But, man, doing all those drafts and getting ready for the season and having all those teams out there and following them throughout the season, my first year I did that, it was awesome. I loved it.
It is, and it's a big step, and it's a step that if it can be managed from a time standpoint and then be repeated from a success standpoint, he'll enjoy it year in, year out. I got the vibe from him, Balky, that, just basically this stuff is not that complicated, and I enjoy doing it. And, he seems to enjoy every aspect of it. He's not afraid to say when he doesn't know a player or doesn't can't figure a player out. He's and he understands the players as what they mean to him in the construction of his team, and I like that, and obviously it's paying dividends for him.
I want to, just before we get to a couple of emails here, before we close up shop for the week, Farrell, he said his bust, or not as necessarily a bust, but a guy he was staying away from was Chase Edmonds. And I know a lot of people early on were drafting him. And then even after, it didn't look like they were going to add anybody, people were still drafting Chase Edmonds high. Now, he slipped to the 6th round based on the James Conner signing. How do you fall in on this? Does Edmonds represent a good buy for you in the 6th round, or are you more likely to take Conner, in the 10th round? And I apologize, I cannot remember if I asked you this before or not, but I'm going to ask you again, because if you answered it, I forgot what you said. No, you haven't asked it before, but in the area of the 6th round, he gets no attention from me because I like the receivers. More importantly, I like the running backs that are in that area, and I don't feel comfortable and consistently understand what they're going to do in Arizona, and I struggle. I've got to look in because I really want to figure out Rondale Moore and what that means to me. And I don't think a lot of other players have figured that out either, because you can tell me what the Mojo says about him, but I don't think he's moved much either. But so that's a situational no for me. I don't believe that I want to invest that draft capital in Chase Edmonds in the 6th round. Actually, Rondale Moore is going to be right in between a couple of receivers we touched on tonight. Rondale Moore, wide receiver 54 at the 1209 in Football Guys draft. That is right after Rashad Bateman and Darnell Mooney, who we all know Derek Kappes is a fan of. And it is right ahead of T.Y. Hilton and Henry Ruggs, another guy that Derek was completing his Raider stacks with, the Ruggs John Brown duo in best ball drafts. We'll see how that turns out for him. But that is where Rondale Moore is going in drafts right now. Let's shift our focus over to our listener emails, and we're going to kick things off with Art in Savannah, Georgia. He writes, how concerning is it that Antonio Gibson is still rehabbing a toe injury that happened almost half a calendar year ago, considering where he's going in FPC drafts? Thank you, gentlemen. That is Art, Savannah, Georgia. Art, we appreciate the email. We thank you. And I'll tell you right now, Antonio Gibson, as he's talking about, running back 14, Farrell, at the 209. That is right behind Joe Mixon and Aaron Jones. It's right ahead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire and J.K. Dobbins. You feel good about that spot for Antonio Gibson at the 209? Me personally, I think I could be on board with that. I think the toe is a little bit concerning, but you're talking about a rocked-up, thick, three-down back that's got a lot of pass-catching experience. Yeah, I'm going to take a chance on him at the 209.
Sure, and when people reach for him, it doesn't surprise me. I see him go off much earlier in the 2nd round sometime. But, Art has a very good point. There's nothing that can ruin a player's season quicker than a bad toe. Turf toe, ligaments, whatever it is, the toe is one of the greatest areas of frustration because there's no real and quick way to heal it. You can ice it, you can shoot it, you can do whatever you want, but it's still going to linger. It's still going to hurt. We watched Patrick Mahomes and what happened with Super Bowl this year, and that should be an indication that of what a toe can do to a player. A
minuscule appendage, yet it has a massive impact on a player, especially a running back. That depends on using that toe to cut and plant. So we're going to find out more as the season goes on, and if they're resting him more and he's not out there in training camp a lot, then yeah, certainly I think he's going to slip. Right now, knowing what I know, I can get on board with him at that spot. Moving on to Jim in Brainerd, Minnesota. How are you guys handling the Cowboys tight end situation when you consider Jarwin coming back from his injury and how Dalton Schultz performed in his place in 2020? Jim in Brainerd, Minnesota, we thank you for emailing in. I looked at this earlier before the show started, Farrell, and there is quite a bit of disparity here between these two tight ends. Blake Jarwin right now is going off the board in Football Guys drafts over the last 5 days, tight end 20 at the 12:03. Dalton Schultz going much, much later than that, actually. Tight end 36 at the 19:09. So he's basically one of those final pick flyer type players right now. That's a lot of disparity between Jarwin and Schultz, and I guess everybody's sort of assuming that Jarwin is going to be the guy, and when Prescott comes back, Jarwin's powers are going to be even more magnified. And if that's true, he's an awesome value in the 12th round. I guess I just worry about Schultz being out there and how much that's going to affect both these guys' end-of-season numbers.
We've got to see this in preseason because, in the previous broadcast, I said that I just don't see how they can regulate to the bench a tight end with the kind of hands that Schultz has, 60-plus catches last year from those quarterbacks. And there's a lot of great pass catchers on this team, and a running back that I think is coming back in a serious way this year with Zeke Elliott. And then we just heard this week that Pollard, who when in college got much work in the slot position, is getting more work there early on in camp. So I just there's too much unknown for me to figure this out. And in the FFPC, I'm not waiting that late to figure tight end out. So, I may miss out on a golden opportunity, but this one's just not for me right now. I reserve the right to change my mind because I think I like both these players, but I really can't figure out what's going to happen with them. I'd like to get in touch with our man up in Brainerd to see what he thinks about the movie Fargo. Sometimes you could send that to him. Because Brainerd was a big deal in that movie.
It was huge, for sure, and obviously being a Midwestern boy, obviously I was a fan as well, even though it's from a neighboring state. Dalton Schultz basically free, so I guess I'd take a chance on him in the 19th round. Who cares? As a third tight end in Football Guys drafts, if I were drafting in that. Jarwin's a little bit more nebulous, right, as far as what to do with him, because in that area there means Zach Ertz is going there. If he gets traded, his ADP is going to go up because he's going to be traded to a team that wants to use him. Anthony Ferkser is going right around there. We saw him catching a ton of passes at minicamp, obviously, as well. Adam Troutman, I'm a fan of this year. And then don't forget about Hunter Henry, too. So I think all those guys make some sense there. And not to mention, Gerald Everett, Cole Kmet, Jared Cook. I mean, these are all guys going after Jarwin. So there's some good tight end goodness there in the 11th, 12th round for Football Guys drafts this year. If you want to get your third one there, or even a backup, if you draft a stud right away, I think you can find some players that you really want to be in business with. Final email tonight, Farrell. Nick in Southfield, Michigan. Dear Terry and Cordell, are you convinced that Big Ben and his reconstructed throwing elbow are going to be able to keep the Steelers playmakers elite in 2021? Appreciate it. That is Nick in Southfield, Michigan. Nick, thank you for the email. We appreciate it. So Big Ben had his elbow surgery reconstructed last year. We know he wasn't exactly the most accurate passer. Well, he's never been really the most accurate deep passer, but it was really bad last year, Farrell. Chase Claypool, I know you love. You also got Deontay Johnson, Juju Smith-Schuster there. There's going to be a lot of weapons for Roethlisberger to throw to. Are you concerned about the elbow affecting that at all this season?
Yeah, and I don't know how to answer the question because until we see this guy play in a preseason game, we won't know. But I've never been engaged with quarterbacks to understand what's going on with the elbow, you know, and I can't give you any meaningful insight on it. You know, Roethlisberger's an older player. Older players have trouble recovering. It was difficult to, you know, we were watching an undefeated team there for a while, Balky, and then the wheels came off. I refuse to believe that any of these receivers who put up numbers last year in such an impressive way are going to be thwarted too much by any physicality issues with Roethlisberger. He seems like a tough guy, and they know how to get open in tight spaces. I think it'll be fine.
Farrell, do I have you back?
I'm with you, Balky.
Farrell, do I have you back?
I'm back here, Balky.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know. We're having some issues with BTR. It's a good time to end the show in any event. I would say we got through covered a lot of ground for anybody drafting. This weekend, it's going to be a fun weekend of drafting, whether it's in the KFFSC, the Football Guys Players Championship, the FFPC Best Ball Tournament. A lot of stuff going on there. Remember, if you want more information on the KFFSC, go to kffsc.com. You can always follow KFFSC on Twitter. Farrell, you want to hit up the phone numbers at 502-471-7281 for anybody who has any questions about the league?
No, I don't want them to call that number, although they would really enjoy it because my lovely mother
good thing
would be likely to
I didn't just give it out or anything like that.
But, you know, Balky, I got to tell you, I got a couple quick things to go through this week. We have lived this week without benefit of Good Morning Football on the NFL Network. I think it has something to do with they gave the staff the day off, but I haven't seen the week off. I haven't seen any official announcement for it. But that is a staple in our household. And my 95-year-old mother, who continues to recover from her hip surgery, is very angry that there's no Good Morning Football, and she can speak to me about about how Kay Adams is making some fashion mistakes and what she's doing right. So, you know, football evaluation goes across. The other thing is I really want to give a congratulations. You know, we were talking to Derek about his coming live to draft in the FFPC. And I know we're up against it, and I'll be quick about this. We talked in the episode about the Baltimore Ravens coming to town, and I want to tip my hat to the FFPC who, when hotel rooms are almost non-existent across the Las Vegas landscape, and the ones that are available are ridiculously expensive, what a great job the FFPC has done to secure us affordable hotel rooms if you're staying 3 days like me or 5 days like Derek or 2 weeks like Balky. You know, whatever it is, great job with the FFPC. And I'll finish up, our main event is open. We want guys to sign up and come into August to Kentucky, good old sweat, hot Kentucky, and sweat it out and draft some great teams as you prepare for the FFPC. And Balky, your championship, which you're defending, the checkered flag, is still open throughout the month of June. I gotta get ready and get some players. We have 4 more 12-team divisions to draft, and I believe you're in one of them. And I think everyone would love to come and have the honor of competing with you.
Yeah, checkered flag. Obviously, I'm privy and biased because I won it last year. I was fortunate enough to win it. But yeah, it is a fun competition. The next draft, I think, is popping off on Wednesday, and then the following Sunday. There are plenty of spots available in those leagues as well. Those 4 leagues that are remaining. So hopefully you can pop on and draft there. Farrell, always good to talk to you again, man. We'll do this again next Friday, dude.
Thank you, Balky. See you then.
Farrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, the head honcho over at the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. Sign up for those leagues at kffsc.com today. That is going to wrap up tonight's show, the first show of June, as we are right in the thick of drafting season. Like I said at the top, no excuse not to be drafting now. The draft is done, free agency is done, the players are practicing. We're seeing it all right now. So make sure you're hopping into a draft right now, or more than one. Obviously, we have a ton ton of action available over at the FFPC. Don't forget about the inaugural Best Ball Tournament, which is going on, $100,000 grand prize, a $500,000 prize pool there, just $125 for your entry. Football Guys drafts popping off early and often right now. Several of those going off each and every day, even though it is still June. $500,000 grand prize there if you want to hop in. The midnight draft tonight, still plenty of spots available in that. We'll try to get that one off. And I'll be in the draft rooms all weekend and checking out what everybody's doing live as drafts after the midnight draft tonight will resume at 1 p.m. on Saturday. I want to thank Derek Kappes, Farrell Elliott, the FFPC, Rob and Bryce, and, of course, each and every one of you for listening to the show tonight. We will be back next week at 10/9 Central on Friday with 14-time main event Football Guys and FFPC League champion Alex Balazzo. That's right, Alex Balazzo is going to be on the program next week. And for the special announcement that I said at the top of the show, we will be announcing all the Joes for the 2021 Pros versus Joes competition. All those Joes will be announced on the show next week. We have 7 leagues this year, so obviously you're looking at 42 Joes. We're going to name all 42 Joes right on the show. If you want to hear your name called, hear if it is called, the first chance you will hear of it will not be an FFPC email, will not be a message board post, will not be anything on social media. It will be on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening tonight, hanging out with us. Always a pleasure to do this, especially this time of year when there's so much stuff going on. And by the way, once training camps really heat up, we're going to have a lot more to discuss. ADP is going to change again. It's going to be very exciting. I mentioned a lot of redraft options for you at the FFPC. Don't forget about the Dynasty startups. Those are popping off. I think we got probably, maybe a dozen of them going off this weekend. So if you want to get in on that, definitely take advantage. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Your weekend officially starts right now.
This has been another episode of the High
Farrell touched on this earlier as far as the accommodations go with the FFPC live events in September. And I do want to give a shout out to Greg Sidoris, our casino host out there, who's been working with us for, it seems like almost a decade now. He helps organize a lot of giveaways for the viewing party at halftime every year, which we'll see again this year. Very excited for the Cowboys and Buccaneers to watch that. Very excited to get back to Vegas. We had our live events go off last year, but we didn't have, everybody there that's normally there, myself included. I wasn't even there last year. I'm very excited to get back there this year. I think it's going to be awesome. I think this could be our biggest turnout ever. A lot of people itching to get back there. And, yeah, Farrell's right. I mean, you can check out the FFPC email news blast that I send twice a week, and you can see on there the difference, what you'd be paying without the FFPC group discount. So make sure you're taking advantage of that, booking those flights, booking those hotel rooms, signing up for those leagues, and trying to take a chance at life-changing money. Maybe $500,000 is going to be happening for you this year. You never know unless you try. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. I'll see you in the draft rooms this weekend.